Hi everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits and welcome to the Sock Blank Special 2, a ChemKnits dye-along. We have so much exciting content ready for this week. We are going to be dyeing sock blanks, both commercially purchased and homemade blanks in a variety of different ways. And we're going to make some really amazing yarn. And I can't wait to see what you guys create in addition to seeing what I end up creating here too. Um, so hi, welcome. I'm glad that you guys are all able to join. And now I'm just trying to go and see so I can see, just making sure everything is going well with the, all right, I'm switching over to, uh-oh. Sorry, everyone. I'm just trying to make sure I can see your comments because it has decided to behave a little goofy on me. And awesome. I think I can see comments now. Great. Oh, good. I'm so glad that you guys were able to join me. All right. So if you're new to the channel and you're wondering what is the Sock Blank Special, when I did my Kickstarter campaign back in October, I had the Sock Blank Special as a stretch goal. And if we reached a certain target, then I would offer some sock blanks as a reward and therefore film a bunch of bonus videos. It was so much fun. And there were so many requests for different types of ways to dye these blanks that I decided to do another sock blank special week. But in one of the live streams, someone said, we should do a dye along. And so I thought that the sock blank special was the perfect opportunity to do a dye along, because if we planned it far enough in advance, then everyone would be able to assemble their materials and we could all create different, it's a unifying theme for everyone to go out and do a lot of dyeing. And, and if you're not sure what a sock blank is, this is a commercial sock blank. This is one that I purchased from KnitPicks. The link to this item is in the video description. This is a Stroll fingering weight sock blank, and it is knit with 2 strands of the Stroll fingering weight yarn. It's a superwash merino nylon blend. And since the 2 strands of yarn are knit together through this entire piece of knit fabric, however we dye it, we will end up with 2 identical 50-gram skeins of yarn in the end, which is great because however random of a pattern you dye, like in these that I unraveled the other day, if you want to make socks or mittens or something, you can get a matching set. Now, some sock blanks come as are single-stranded, so they're only made with 1 strand of yarn knit through the whole thing. And that can be fun for using for, again, totally random patterns, but you can also do some really cool stripes and gradients and progressions of color that would be really difficult to do if you were just dyeing a circular hank of yarn. Welcome. Ooh, you've made 2 crochet blanks. Oh, you're gonna make a corner-to-corner crochet blank? That sounds really fun. And so here is an example of a dyed blank. And this video I don't think will be coming out this week at all, but it is an unwound or like an intact sock blank that I have here. This is another commercial blank. And you can see, since it's starting to unravel a bit, that we've got 2 strands of yarn here together, and that the speckles that are coming off of this blank are matched. And so, you would get, getting these kinds of specks and random pattern match is not something you could do with even a tonal yarn that's done in one dye pot. There would still be subtle variations that might vary from skein to skein. But if you have a double-stranded sock blank, you can get something that is identical. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me. So tonight we are kicking off our dye-along. I know that a lot of you are members of the ChemKnits Lab group on Facebook. It is a group for ChemKnits fans, and everyone you know, it's not just me driving the conversation there. Everyone is sharing their own dyeing projects, and some people have already gotten started with their dyeing sock blanks. And so we have a lot of fun. And the only requirement to join is that you have to have some interest in fiber arts of any kind, you know. And so when you request to join, please say, you know, knitting, crochet, or just one thing in the question, because then I can approve you right away. Because since I named it lab, because I was like, oh, experiments, dyeing experiments, my lab group, there are some people who request to join who are actually looking for like a science group. And, you know, science, knitting, nerdy knitting type patterns are more than welcome. They're some of my favorite to design and knit. But yeah, it's just, it helps to weed out people who are actually want the interest of the group. But, you know, crocheters are welcome. Weavers are welcome. If you like yarn, you know, even if maybe you want to dye fabric for sewing, you know, that's all very, very welcome. So I decided in the first sock blank special I did, I dyed only these commercial knit blanks from Knit Picks. The problem with these blanks, I mean, they unwind beautifully, and I really, really love them. It's one of my favorite yarn bases. So in many ways, they're great. But they are about $20 a piece. And so that can be a little prohibitive for some people. So I also wanted to make sure to showcase a lot of homemade blanks. And I'm going to start showing you some of the ones that I've made in a moment. But ultimately, when it comes to making your own blank or buying your blank, it comes down to, is it worth it to you to do this? And is the time and effort, if it's worth it to you and you're having fun to create these colors and make your own blank, it's totally worth it. But yeah, I mean, I will still be featuring a lot of these. And I do have some other videos on the channel already that feature homemade blanks. But I wanted to make sure to showcase, I think, at least one homemade blank in each of the live streams that I do this week. And some of the pre-filmed videos that will be coming out, those have a mixture. I think most of those are the commercial blanks, but the live streams will feature more of the homemade ones. Welcome. You'll be starting dyeing tomorrow as it's 12 midnight. Yeah, I'm not doing dyeing tonight. This is more just, we're going to talk over what we're going to do this week and the plan. So I dropped a link in the chat, and it's also in the video description, but I'm dropping a link again for the schedule for the next week. It's on my website, chemknits.com, and it has sort of a timeline of the videos that will be released, but more importantly, it also has the schedule for the live streams. So if you want to catch me live and give input into the dyeing and ask questions as I am dyeing these sock blanks, or even dye along with me at home and try to type things without getting food coloring and other dyes on your laptop, then you can join in. But so all the times are in Eastern time. I know YouTube sometimes displays, when I like pre-schedule the event, they'll display the time in Pacific time. So make sure, I guess, you pay attention to that. But when I say the time on the blog in Eastern time, that's when I intend to start the live streams. But the live streams will be starting at, so they'll be every day, Monday through Friday, and they're going to start at a variety of times. Like tomorrow night, on Monday night, it'll start at 8 p.m. On Tuesday, I think I'm going to start in the morning. Yeah, on Tuesday, I'll start at 9 a.m. Eastern. Wednesday, I'll start at noon Eastern. Thursday will be another 8 p.m. And then Friday will be a 10:30 a.m. for the live stream, which, you don't need to remember that. It's all written down. And later tonight, I will finish making all of the live stream events. So that way you can sort of toggle a little remind me on there. And I don't know if YouTube sends a notification or something, but the live stream links will all be available under if you go to the ChemKnits tutorials channel page, at the very top, it'll say upcoming live streams. And so right now I have tomorrow's is public already, and I'll be finishing up the rest of the live streams for the week. So that way you know where to find them and can be ready to go. So I am in Massachusetts. So all the times that I was just mentioning are Eastern time zone for the United States. And eek, the commercial blanks come in these nice little flat bags. So tomorrow's live stream is going to feature random patterns. And I'm going into each of these streams with a little bit of a plan. I have some ideas that I've written down on a notebook and things that I want to make sure that I hit on live streams. But in tomorrow's, I think I'm going to dye probably a lot. Definitely at least 3, maybe 4 different blanks. And part of the reason for this is on Wednesday, we're going to do some stamping and stenciling of blanks. But I decided that I didn't want to do that on a white background. I wanted to have, or at least not 100% white background. I wanted to make another pastel color to have as the canvas for that day. And so I will dye those tomorrow on Monday night using I think I'll crinkle one up and maybe do some tie-dye spirals. Maybe we'll dip dye in random patterns or space dye. We'll kind of see, and we'll chat, I guess, about this tonight to see what kind of patterns we might want to achieve. But I think that I'll dye at least 2 blanks for the stamping session, which I am very, very excited about. So you're excited. You ordered a whole bunch of wool-like yarn from Michaels. Ooh, 85% acrylic, 15% nylon. So that blend yarn should definitely take up some color, but because the nylon, if you're dyeing with acid dyes or food coloring, the nylon will absorb those colors. But 15% is pretty low, whereas I can't really grab I've got a blanket that I've shown it. If you look for the ChemKnits 10-hour Afghan, you'll see one of my patterns that I did many years ago. And in that, there are a bunch of, it's made out of yarn that is 75% acrylic, 25% wool. No, sorry, 80% acrylic, 20% wool. And those are the first yarns I ever dyed with food coloring and Kool-Aid. And so those, that will show you some of the colors that you get with 20%. So with 15, I would expect a slightly paler color, but you should get some color, so it would be fun. So when I talk about homemade blanks, where do those come from? So I know a couple people actually have reclaimed sweaters from secondhand shops and sweaters that they can take apart and unravel to upcycle the yarn. And if you think about it, a sleeve of a sweater or even the front or back of a sweater is a perfect blank already for dyeing. But for those of us that haven't found the perfect sweater, either in our own closet, I suppose, as well, or a secondhand shop, we might use knitting machines to help us. You certainly could hand knit a blank, but for me, that's a little too much time. That might be a little too much time. But I have, technically I have 3 knitting machines, but the 2 that I use the most in this are, first I have the Singer knitting machine, and this is the slightly newer model. And this machine gives us a blank that looks, going into my box, like this. So it's a tube because I knit them in the round. But so we get a nice long, skinny, scarf-like blank, which is, a little in contrast to this flat blank that we get from Knit Picks, but is still something that dyes really nicely and is really, fun to work with. I did start, and you might have seen the video on the channel, trying to make a flat blank on this machine. And the gears were such, it did not like going in each direction. And so it would kind of catch. And that made it really difficult for me. So I actually gave up on making a flat blank on this machine. And it's something that with patience, you could totally do. It was just too much for me to really try. Okay, so this is the Singer knitting machine blank. You can see that it's pretty thin. I also have the Loops and Threads knitting machine. Let me hold these up together so you can see the size difference. I think this has about 22 stitches or so. This one has 40. And so it's a much, we see my little crown. It's a much bigger machine. And therefore, because of the more stitches, you get a much thicker blank. And so just to compare, these are both done in the round. It's with the same yarn. These are both Knit Picks Wool of the Andes worsted weight yarn. This one I did with the Singer knitting machine. This one I did with the Loops and Threads machine. And so why might you want to have both machines? Well, the way that these are made around, they're good for different kinds of techniques. I mean, certainly with either one, you could do a gradient, but the wider the surface area you have, the more space there is to take advantage, I guess, of the plane across a row versus like something with the length. And so if you wanted to do stripes, then maybe the thinner blank could be more useful for getting your striping done. But the other thing to think about is since these are done in the round, you're dealing with two pieces of fabric. So what you get on one side might be different from the other. Silk uses a different type of dye. Actually, silk, a lot of dyes that work, there's some dyes that work on silk, but not necessarily wool, but silk is a protein-based fiber. And so you can dye silk with food coloring and acid dyes. I haven't shared the videos yet, but I have actually broken violet on a 100% woven silk scarf. So you absolutely can dye silk with food coloring and acid dyes. But what's the difference between a hank and a skein of dyeable yarn? I think that so I sort of use skein and hank interchangeably. Some people might, so not 100% correct, but what? Okay, as I almost like make a mess out of this. But, you know, when you have the circular hank of yarn like this, some people will call, I think the circular forms like the skein, but I sort of call it all skein and hank interchangeably. It just means that it's sort of wound into, when I say it, I mean that it's wound into a circle. And so therefore it's sort of neat and orderly that you can use for dyeing. And I often will have my my skeins of yarn sort of stored in this twisted manner. Acrylic will not work with food coloring. You can certainly make a blank out of acrylic and then hand paint it with something like rich Dymore synthetic or something like that. But food coloring will not even stain the acrylic, so you will not be able to see anything like that. Yeah, but so the two knitting machines are really nice. But, and I have not filmed this yet, but if you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, you'll see I made a flat blank last night on the Loops and Threads knitting machine. That's this big black and white one that I got from Michael's. And you can see that it curls because it's stockinette. But once I pre-soak it, I should be able to block it. And so this flat blank, this flat Wool of the Andes blank is one of the two that I plan to use in the stamping and stenciling episode that is going to be on Wednesday, because it's just going to be one layer of fabric and we can have a lot of surface area to work with. Therefore, I'm going to try to dye this tomorrow in the random patterns one. And I don't know if I'm going to crinkle it up or if I'm going to space dye it or what. I haven't quite decided, but I want to give it some background color to have a non-bare yarn canvas for when we do the stamping and stenciling. You can crochet it by hand. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the Loops and Threads machine is kind of expensive in Canada. But I saw a question about a crochet blank, and I'm glad you asked. So I have one crochet blank episode that's pre-filmed. I guess, did I mention, in addition to having live streams every day, I also have a pre-filmed episode of just a sock blank episode coming out every day. So that way, if life happens, like, I don't know, someone else breaks a bone, then there will at least be a new episode every day. And one of those does feature a double stranded crochet blank. And here's another one. So I think I did about 30 stitches back and forth, and I forget what size hook I used. Maybe it was an N or M hook. So I used a bigger hook than the one I used before, but this was knit or crocheted with 2 strands of worsted weight yarn together. So that way, again, when we dye this, we'll end up with 2 identical 50-gram skeins of yarn. And so that will be really fun. And this one, my plan with this one is to do stripes because I sort of want to see how that comes out with the color transitions. So this one I know for sure is going to be in the Tuesday stripe, and more stripes episode. But I also have, this is a single-stranded, chunky weight crochet blank. This is it's bulky weight. This is the Knit Picks Big O yarn, and this one is 50% superwash merino, 50% nylon. And so I have not decided how I'm going to dye this one. And so this is one of the ones that's a candidate for, like, towards the end, we'll start saying, okay, which one should I dye which way? And so this one I haven't decided how I'm going to dye it yet. Do I have a general idea for what you're going to do as far as stamping and stenciling? Nope. I'm going to kind of make it up as I go along. I do have a stamp. I do have one stencil that I bought. I did buy some guar gum to try to use as a thickener. And I'm also going to sort of use some cookie cutters that I have as sort of a stencil, and probably some foam brushes to apply the dye to the yarn. So I sort of want to see, you know, how much the things spread out if I use a thickener versus not. So is it worth it? And we're gonna just kind of go for it and have some fun on, that's the Wednesday episode. Oh, yellows and orange. Oh yeah. Okay. I'll talk about all these yarns in a second. So what else do I have in here? So I have, here's one that I'm excited about. So, you know, I mentioned that for the stamping episode, I wanted to pre-dye the yarns so that way the background isn't just bare yarn. If you're making your own double-stranded blank or single-stranded blank even, there's no reason why you need to start with bare yarn. So here I have, this is stroll fingering weight in the color ash. And I made a double-stranded blank on one of the Singer knitting machines. And I haven't decided how I'm going to dye this one yet. I always want to make everything in dip-dyed Broken Violet, so I'm trying to not do that with absolutely everything. But this is another one that, you know, I'm looking for input on how to dye this one. And so the themes of the live streams will be, so Monday it's random patterns. Tuesday it's stripes, and more stripes. We're going to do, you know, just horizontal stripes, maybe some vertical stripes, maybe some diagonal stripes. I have a lot of ideas of what I'd like to achieve there. Then on Wednesday, we're going to do the stamping and stenciling. And yeah, I thought that cookie cutters, I have a lot of cookie cutters and a lot of shapes, and I don't have a lot of stencils. And so I thought that it could be a nice way to, especially with a foam brush, and yeah, it could just be a nice way to try to get a shape without, because since with the knit fabric and since the gauge is so thick, you're not going to necessarily get something really well defined anyway, but I wanted to see. And, you know, I don't think I'm going to pull out guar gum on Tuesday for the stripes, but apparently it can help with bleeding in general, so you could end up getting yourself more defined stripes and minimize breaking by using a thickening agent. Plaid would be really cool. Yeah. I did, well, it wasn't technically a plaid, but I did sort of a checkerboard on one of the Sock Blank special episodes last time, but that was one of the blanks I didn't get to unravel myself. So you'll see that I have some live streams where I did some unraveling of blanks. And, you know, most of all, there's basically been spoilers for all the pre-filmed episodes because I've unraveled them in live streams throughout the last few weeks. But there's no reason why you have to unravel your blanks before you use them. You could knit directly from your blank. If you wanted to do, say, 2 at a time socks, you could just knit and let it unravel, as you work, and kind of cut out the middleman. Polka dots. Oh yeah, I mean, the sky's the limit. You could do splatter. So people have been wanting to do like water balloon type stuff. That I'm not planning to do this week, but excuse me, it certainly is not off the table. What was I looking for? Oh, so then Thursday is going to be spray painting. And so I'm going to use some of the Wilton Color Mist sprays I've shown before. But I also have a Misto pressurized sprayer for making my own to see how that compares as like my own pressurized mist. And I have some other like spritzer spray bottles that I want to play with. And then on Friday, the theme is speckles, sprinkles, and more. And so we'll use dry Kool-Aid. We'll use a bunch of different sprinkles to make some specks. I might even do some speckling with concentrated food coloring and maybe a fork to make like a gradient color of like little speckles versus more splotchy speckles that we get sometimes from these blanks. And yeah, but it's also an opportunity to revisit things that we wanted to do, whether it's big polka dots or the plaid that you guys are suggesting now. Pink background and black design. Ooh, yeah. See, I love color suggestions. But I have so here. So I mentioned making your own double-stranded blanks, and I've done that on both of my machines so far. And the way I recommend that you do it is that you split your yarn into 2 separate balls of yarn. So whether you start off with 200-gram balls of yarn or you divide one skein in half, so you get 2 50-gram balls of yarn. But if you do that and work from 2 balls of yarn at a time, you won't end up with a blank that's really hard to untwist when you're done. If you start with both ends of a center pull ball, you kind of will have to untwist it as you unwrap it, because the way that the outside strand kind of comes up, it wraps around the inside strand and was just a little bit of a pain to unravel it. I think it was still doable. It just took me about twice as long to unravel. So if you do a pattern on a blank, then unravel it. Does it knit back up in the pattern that was put on the blank? No. I mean, technically, sure. You could get something pretty close if you matched. Where's my... Okay, so if you match the gauge of your blank exactly, you could recreate the pattern that is on your blank. However, if you want to recreate the pattern that was on your blank, then you're better off knitting, say, your sock or your hat, and then painting the design directly on that than you are painting on a blank, unraveling it, and trying to recreate that. Now, if you're painting stripes or something, then that's something, or if you're dip dyeing a gradient, you're going to get a gradient on your hat. But that's the overall big picture way that the yarn is dyed. But, you know, if you, for example, were writing song lyrics on a blank like I did with this one, you know, you're not going to knit it to reform those words. Like, that's just not something that would really happen. But you can have, you know, if you draw a picture for someone and then unravel it and turn it into something else where it's more of a random pattern, you can have a message on there that you share with someone. So you could, you know, if I wanted to make a hat for one of my kids, I could draw their name on the blank and decorate that and then unravel it and make a hat for them. And it's sort of like a, you know, if they've seen a picture of the blank as it was dyed, it's like a secret that we have, that like your name is in this as like a secret message. So there's fun stuff like that that you can do. But watching and knitting, you dropped a stitch. Oh no! No, and there's never apologize for asking any questions. That's, you know, one of the reasons why I'm starting this way now. Have you ever seen put a pattern in your project, then dye it? So I have not dyed a complete project before, but I've had people share with me, like I've had people make fingerless mitts and then dip dye them to get the gradient that they wanted. And so, you know, you could tie dye and get a cool pattern. So there's a lot of things that you could do. And I do want to do some videos at some point about dyeing finished projects as well. It's just, you know, when you're dyeing a blank, yes, you can have mistakes and get things that aren't quite the way that you wanted when you set out. But when you unravel it, the yarns are all really cool. But I was talking about the double-stranded blanks. I get distracted easily. I did attempt on the Singer knitting machine to make a double-stranded worsted weight blank and a double-stranded DK weight blank. This is the Wool of the Andes worsted. This one is Swish DK. I do not recommend making double-stranded blanks on the Singer machine, and probably not the Loops and Threads machine, of yarns that are thicker than fingering weight. The machines are really made for worsted weight yarns, and so if you try to double it up, they really start to struggle, and the tension is just a little too much to handle. And so yes, I did complete these blanks, and I did make them, but the machine struggled while it was doing it. So if you really want a double-stranded worsted blank, then maybe you're better off crocheting one, which does take longer than cranking one on the knitting machine. But I was, you know, when watching TV at night with my husband, I was able to finish this without too much effort. So that's just something to keep in mind. But so I've got, you know, in the shapes that I've shown you, that's basically the shapes of the blanks that I have so far. And, oh, Lucas is going to bed right now. But let me do some spoilers of what will be coming out in the pre-filmed episodes. Whoop. And of course, I was trying to figure out a way to like tie a little bow to keep these 50-gram skeins of yarn together with their identically matched pair. I mean, of course, I also have labels on them. When I do yarn labels, I have, you know, things like the fiber content, but also the episode. I write the episode that they come on. Oh, come on. All right. I got to rethink that little bow if it just unties. But so tomorrow's Dye Pot Weekly episode is coming out on Monday instead of the Tuesday and sometimes Friday. But so we've got this rainbow stripe that is really all the colors of the rainbow, but the stripes are in varying widths, and it is really fun. But this was one of the blanks that I made a double-stranded blank from a center pull ball, and there's a live stream of me unraveling it, and it took some effort. But the yarns are so cool, and I dyed these with some Jacquard acid dyes. So I think that those are really, really fun. In another episode, marble dyeing a blank would be really, really fun. I don't know why my chat window has gotten so small. If I miss a question, feel free to ask again. In another episode, I did some snow dyeing, and I used different colors of Kool-Aid on a single-stranded worsted weight blank and on a commercial Stroll double-stranded blank. And so what was cool about this was that this was the same exact dye, the same exact conditions, and the color on the Stroll yarn, the Superwash Merino Nylon Blend, was way more vibrant than just the 100% wool. And so this, I think, is a really fun one as well. Do you have trouble making a flat blank with the quick knit? No, it was actually like, making the flat blank on here was actually much easier than I thought. You sort of have to pay attention to the edges a bit more and sort of make sure to pull down on it. But once I kind of got the hang of it and the hang of watching what the hooks do, I sort of got into a rhythm, and I was able to, I made 2 in an evening. Yeah, and so that's that's one that I think both of them are singles. Did I make a double-stranded one? No, I think I just made 2 single-stranded ones. But that is that, you know, I'll make a video on making a flat one at some point, but probably not this week. So here is another yarn that I love. This was a crochet blank that I dip dyed into Wilton's Violet food coloring. And you can see that we've definitely got this gradient from magenta to purple. And then we've got blue specks throughout the whole thing. which I think is fun. And then in our most recent unraveling, I shared a blank that I ice dyed using ice cubes because I know not everyone has snow to play with. So I wanted to do a frozen dyeing technique that could be more accessible to everyone. And then I also did sort of dip dyeing, and then I wrote on here some song lyrics with some edible food coloring markers. And so that was just a little fun project. And so this is a little sneak peek of some of the things that will be shown outside of the live streams for inspiration. Someone's going to do a Bob Ross painting. Oh, that's awesome. That is going to be so fun. So back to the marbling, I actually have an Easter egg marbling dye kit that has like a foam, an edible foam that you can make to use for marbling Easter eggs. And I plan to use that on probably a blank at some point. But I don't think I'm necessarily going to use that this week. I think I might do that in a upcoming Dye Pot Weekly episode. But yeah, Bob Ross. So the real problem that I have with these planks is that the patterns that I'm painting are mostly pretty random or pretty simple. Because yes, I can be an artist when it comes to dyeing fiber, but I don't really have much drawing talent. I've seen people who have turned blanks into masterpieces, and it's something that is a bit beyond my ability. But yes, and yeah, post pictures of what you do in the ChemKnits lab. I think that I'll put a post up on the public ChemKnits Facebook page for people to add pictures of what they've done in the comments, so that way people can go and check it out. And maybe I'll collect pictures and do like a happy little slideshow to share at the end of the week. I know I still need to make a slideshow of people are still submitting pictures of things they've made with the yarns that I made in past videos from Kickstarter awards, but I'm still waiting for some more submissions before I do that first video. But I think that everything that you guys are making is just really inspiring. And so this is a blank I'm excited about, and I think it's going to be a Dye Pot Weekly episode. I don't know if I want to have an episode come out on Saturday. It's going to be a pretty busy week, but the thing that's awesome about this blank is, so this is the right side. And so you see this gradient of gray splotches. Here's the wrong side. I'm really excited about it. Hi, welcome. You'll be dyeing with me tomorrow. Woohoo! Yes, post into the group. I mean, so what's the worst thing that can happen when you're dyeing your own yarn? Besides, okay, I suppose the worst thing that could happen is you could burn down your kitchen. That would be bad. Please use safety and, don't leave a wooden spoon on your burner and catch it on fire. Like, I don't know, someone I know who did that recently. Not while dyeing yarn. I was, actively cooking, but yes, I knocked a wood spoon onto my burner. But my fire alarms didn't even go off. I caught it and, and submerged it in water really quickly. But anyway, yeah, so be smart and use like common kitchen safety. But the worst that can happen is that you end up with a color you don't love. And if you end up with a color you don't love, unless you've dyed the yarn and it's all black, then there's not much you could really do to it. But anything else, you could always over dye. Excuse me. I have a video, a Dye Pot Weekly episode, where I over dyed highlighter yellow yarn, and the resulting colors were gorgeous. So you can really shift something, even if it's a really, really bright color. And worst case scenario, you can over dye it black, right? I mean, you can always kind of take it a bit further if you don't love it. Worst thing would be felting the yarn. Oh, a starry night pattern would be really, really pretty. Yes, okay, that's true. Felting the yarn would also be pretty bad. But I have once, and this was when I used the RIT Dymore synthetic dye on 100% wool yarn and had to do a million rinses to get the excess dye out. And this is a case where I was using a dye that was intended for synthetic fibers, not natural fibers. But I decided to try it on a natural fiber just to see what would happen. And the yarn is slightly felted, but I was able to reskein it. It's still something that's knittable. It's not perfect by any stretch, but I have yet to end up with a really, really felted mess. So to avoid felting your yarns, try to avoid abrupt temperature changes and try to avoid agitating your fibers too much while they are in the pot. But you can see I frequently let my pots accidentally get too hot so things start bubbling, or and I show when I'm washing so you can see how much agitating I'm doing and when I'm letting the water run on the fibers and when I'm being extra careful versus not being as careful. So that way, I've been waiting for the let's felt the skeins so that I can be like, okay, this is the time I took it too far, but I haven't quite got there yet. That's a friend's mantra. You can always dye it black. Wait, how do I not remember that? How do I not remember that? I'm like a friend's. This isn't good. I can't figure out the episode. I even have a friend's trivia game in my house. I'll have to look it up later. You can see that I get, you kind of got me there. But yeah, so this is anyway, I shared these are the spoilers that will be coming up this week. And yeah, so let's think about planning these guys out as I sink into the center of my couch. Hopefully I don't end up in the no man's land of all the pocket change. So tomorrow, I know that I want to try to do sort of a tie-dye spiral effect. And I think tomorrow I'm going to play around a bit with the Wilton Colorite color performance system because I want to try some of their color recipes for mixing the colors together. But I also might, I think I'll stick mostly with that. And I might pull in some other food colorings as well. And I think that I'm going to do maybe some space dyeing. We'll see if I can get, because I'm going to plan to have the camera set up over my kitchen island. And I do have a sort of hot plate that I can try using. So I'm going to see if I can get that set up and working on my countertop so that way we can do things there. Ooh, you tried some stenciling today? Oh, your friend said that. See, here I was looking for a friend's reference, and I was like, when have there been stains? When have they? Yeah, I was searching. So I think that, so I'll see if I have to either transfer the tripod over to the stovetop or what. But I think I'm going to try to have the countertop set up so that way we can do some hand painting. And I think so it's evening, so we'll see how long I can manage to go tomorrow. But when I did on the first sock length special, I made this really cool ChemKnits random pattern blank, and I'd love to do something like that again with the needle nose squirt bottles. So that would be something else to play with. When it comes to the stripes episode, I plan to use mostly, I might use some squeeze bottles, but I'm going to use a lot of foam brushes. And we're thinking about stenciling and stuff as well. But I found that when I use the foam brushes, I'm actually transferring very little volume of water to the blank at a time because the foam kind of keeps some sucked in. When I squirt on, with a needle nose bottle, the colors will spread out more because I'm actually applying a lot more liquid than I do when I use the foam brush. And so I'm curious when it comes to stenciling, if using the foam brush, how much things will spread out. I'm getting a little ahead, but that's why for stripes, I'm going to use, I think, mostly the craft foam brushes to apply the dye to the yarn. And then, yeah, I mean, I think that, I don't know for sure if I'm going to do vertical stripes. I know some people have been interested in it. I might do some to sort of get something plaid-esque. That would be kind of fun to add some vertical stripes on top of some horizontal stripes. Because the thing with, if you think about just straight vertical stripes on here, you would get, you know, some regular, if your stripes were straight, you would get some regular color repeats as it goes around. But in terms of the scale, I mean, you'd get some cool, sometimes you get some cool modeling and variation of color based on the way the knit stitches hang. But otherwise, you know, how it's still pretty similar to something that you might be able to get if you're dyeing, you know, a skein of yarn that's in the circle. So, but I do like the idea of just like maybe having like one stripe down the edges and down the middle, and then some horizontal stripes as well. That could be pretty cool. What about alcohol inks? So I don't know if those would be permanent on like protein-based fibers like wool. I don't know if I'm going to be pulling out my jacquard acid dyes in any of the live streams because just of timing with when my kids are home and stuff. I don't want them, even though like with pre-mixed, I have stock solutions. So pre-mixed acid dyes are safe actually for kids to use, but you know, not eat or anything. But the timing of when some of the daytime live streams will be ending versus when I have to go get my kids won't leave me a lot of time for cleanup. And it's easier for me to clean up a bunch of the food coloring stuff when they're coming home. But all of the techniques that I do with food coloring translate really well to acid dyes and vice versa, because they ultimately, food coloring molecules are acid dyes. They just happen to also be approved for eating, for consumption. So that's the main difference. Do you need to soak it? Diet Black is a business in Toronto. Do you need to soak it in water and vinegar? Water and vinegar solution. So it depends. So yes, it depends on the technique you're going to do. There's two things that you could do in terms of adding acid when you're hand painting the sock blanks. You could add acid to your dyes themselves, or you can pre-soak your blank in a water vinegar solution or water citric acid solution, so that way there's already acid in the blank. And ultimately, it's sort of up to you. Now, with some food coloring, I've found that especially things like Wilton's Violet that have red number 3, the red will start to crash out if it's in too acidic of a solution. And so therefore, that's one of the reasons why I prefer to add the acid to the bare yarn and then add the dye when I'm hand painting, just because that way more of the reds will stay in solution. So, ooh. Yeah, like you might get difference from different breeds of fleece. In the last, I did a almost 3-hour live stream last week where I dyed a bunch of yarn. And I found that, so silk and alpaca both take up food coloring beautifully, but they require more acid and more time than the superwash wools that I was using. So if you get different results from what I'm getting, pay attention to the fiber types and what might be different, because superwash wool, so this is 75% superwash, 25% nylon. This blend absorbs dye way faster than just 100% wool. And so it's just something to keep in mind as you are prepping for all these things. How much citric acid? Great question. I don't have a good answer for you. That's something I would recommend Googling. I haven't used straight citric acid before. I tend to use white vinegar. The times that I have used citric acid have been when I've used Kool-Aid packets, because that has citric acid in it already. And so sometimes I'll use an exhausted dye bath from some Kool-Aid to dye some yarn, because I know the amount of citric acid in there is enough. But even like 2 packets of Kool-Aid are enough to dye 100 grams of yarn, and then you can use that with some more dye. Can you dye a base color, say gray, dry it, and then re-dye it with stripes of colors. Absolutely. Yeah, okay, so in this yarn, what I did was I did not pre-soak it. I started with a dry blank. I dip dyed it in food coloring, a food coloring solution, which had some vinegar in it. So I dyed it. And then so that color was set. And then I took it out, let it cool. And then I used the food coloring markers to write some song lyrics on it. But I didn't add any additional acid because it had already had acid from the dip dyeing that I did. And so then I didn't need to add more acid to it for that. Now I have also dyed things, washed them, let them dry, and then decided I want to add more color. So then I've gone through and just done the whole dyeing process again, and that has also worked. So that was the stripes. So yeah, the stamping and stenciling, I mentioned I'm going to try cookie cutters. I do have some stamps. I have like one stamp, but I also want to try to use maybe some of the cookie cutters are kind of thick, have like a thick flat plastic part. I think I might want to try to paint some like Wilton's icing color on there directly to stamp and see if we get, some kind of outline. So there's things like that I think that would be really fun to play around with. And then, yeah, I already mentioned what I would be using for the spray painting one, the color mist sprays, misto bottles, and other sort of squirt bottles. But in addition to some pattern ideas I have, I think that, one of the nice things about using these color sprays is that you can get really, really shallow color penetration. This wasn't one that I did using a spray. I actually used a different technique to get the color penetration to be really shallow overall. But spraying the color, at least on these stroll blanks, works really, really well to just get very little color penetration. So you get some really great speckles of color once you unravel it. You use about a tablespoon in the dye bath I'm assuming of citric acid. But you also put a tablespoon of citric acid in the soak. It may be more than you need, but it's never gone wrong. That's great. That's awesome. Thank you. Are you going to ever write a book of your adventures in dyeing? That would be pretty awesome. The thoughts have crossed my mind. It's just a very large undertaking. But it's not out of the realm of possibility for me to attempt to self-publish something at some point. But that is not something necessarily in the near future. For now, I'm going to stick to the videos and stuff, but maybe someday. Can you get the dye yarn at local shops? So you can often get at local shops, you can often find some hand-dyed yarn. In terms of bare yarn, it can sometimes be harder to find locally. Some small local yarn stores might carry some bare yarns, but I think they're more likely to carry some locally produced hand-dyed yarns. But I can find, so sometimes jacquard acid dyes and stuff you can find at, say, art supply stores, not necessarily the big box craft stores, but stores like where art students would go to get their oils and canvases and things like that. They might have a whole textile dyeing section and have a lot more variety in the types of dyes you can find. I buy almost all of my bare yarn from KnitPicks, and they sell some acid dyes as well. Now, the nice thing about food coloring is that you can usually find food coloring everywhere. I mean, you get in this channel, I've dyed yarn with Gatorade, liquid Gatorade, and bottles of Fanta and Hawaiian Punch. So, you can really find a lot of food coloring everywhere, which is one of the reasons why, even with my transitioning to trying more commercial acid dyes, I still plan to do a lot of food coloring based dyeing, just because I know it's something that is really accessible and it's so much less intimidating. When I had a bunch of white yarn around that I wanted to change the color of because I didn't need that much white yarn, that's why I went and I looked how to dye yarn, and I decided to start with Kool-Aid, and the rest is history, right? On a different note, you got your KnitCrate today, and you got the mist colorway. Woohoo! Yeah, the yarn from the KnitCrate is really, really awesome. Actually, let me grab. I don't know if it'll let me do it, but I can drop my link. Speaking of KnitCrate, wait, why will it not? Uh-oh, where's my link? Here it is. Let's see if it'll let me drop this into the chat. Okay, I just attempted to drop my KnitCrate link into the chat. If you use the code, if you use the coupon code ChemKnits20, you'll get 20% off your first KnitCrate subscription, which is pretty awesome that they gave me that. And there's a live stream of me opening my very first KnitCrate on the channel as well. And so, yeah, that's a lot of fun. And it was really nice of them to send it to me so that way I could share it with all of you. And so I'm glad that you got yours. Oh, so your son watches all the videos, and so now when he sees different drinks, he asks, Mommy, can we dye yarn with this? That is awesome. I mean, I have a hard time walking down the grocery aisle without looking at things and being like, ooh, what would that do with yarn? You know, what kind of, you know, how quickly will the color spread out? How quickly will it absorb? And it's just like yeah, it's a fun way to go grocery shopping with like your dyer hat on. Okay, I've got my dyer hat, and I can go to the grocery store and get some stuff. But yeah, I started using, so I started becoming affiliate marketer for a bunch of these yarn companies I think in October was when I started with Knit Picks, and then more companies have been reaching out to me. But I've been using Knit Picks yarns since I started dyeing. The first 100% wool colorway I ever dyed was a Knit Picks palette yarn. And I actually, wear a hat made with that yarn all the time. And it's one of my favorite hats ever. So, it's a really fun rabbit hole to go down and to start playing with all this. But yeah, I even have in all these homemade blanks I made, I've branched out. I did do some with Stroll just to show, your homemade one versus the commercial blank. But I also have ones that have, did I do a silk blend? Let's see what I did. I have here, okay, so I have 100% alpaca blank that I made. I have, so Imagination, which is, I think, an alpaca. Yeah, so it's a alpaca wool nylon blend. I have, this is Hawthorne fingering, which is Highland wool and polyamide. I've got, what are you? Oh, Galileo. That's cool. That is a 50% merino, 50% viscose from bamboo. And that dyes really nicely as well. I can only see like a couple comments at a time. Gatorade is great to dye with, but if you want a 100-gram skein with intense color, yeah, you need like Gatorade is pretty dilute. If you really want to dye with drink mixes, you really want to go towards the either the concentrated drops or the powdered mixes, because then you can make them really concentrated or add a lot to get the color that you want. KnitCrate is a yarn subscription service. So with their KnitCrate membership, for just their flagship membership service, you get a minimum of 2 skeins of yarn. You get 2 different patterns, 1 knitting, 1 crochet, and the yarns are hand dyed by in the KnitCrate membership one are hand dyed by their in-house team exclusively for them. But they also have other crates like the Artisan Crate, which feature independent dyers, And so they have a lot of options to get sort of like a fun surprise, like, ooh, what's in the box kind of thing. And so they reached out to me and offered to send me a couple months worth of their subscription. And then they gave me the coupon code and the link. So I get credit for the sales. And I guess if I make enough sales, then maybe they'll keep sending them to me much longer, so that way I can share them. And so it's sort of like it's a fun thing. I like doing unboxings with you guys. So, yes, the yarn. Oh gosh, yeah. If you look at my Gatorade dyeing video, like I dip dyed and that dye went fast. So yes, if the colors are binding super, super fast, it's probably because there's not very much dye present. If it takes a lot longer, then there's probably a lot more dye there. Oh, hi, Brandon. Thank you for watching. My Lucas is 4 years old too, and he likes to dye yarn with me. But well, I don't think he's asleep yet, but he's trying to go to sleep. I keep hearing him run to go check with his daddy for something or other. So thank you for watching my videos, Brandon. Oh, hi, Marie. How much are, I missed. Oh, so KnitCrate varies. The KnitCrate membership without the 20% off, I think, is $24.99 a month. They have one that I think is about $20 a month, and I think the Artisan Crate is $34 a month. But in the crate that they sent me for February, and so that video is on the channel. So you can, I'm holding up a teal bag, and so I opened up the February crate. So you can go and watch that and see the yarns that I got. But there's 2 skeins of yarn, and if you wanted to buy those yarns individually, then you would pay, I think, $24, $25 for each one from their site. So, excuse me, they give you a significant discount for the hand-dyed yarn in the package that you get. But you can still get the same yarn base and I don't think the KnitCrate membership one is sold out yet, but you can still get that same package that I got with maybe a different colorway, but you can still get that if you sign up before the end of February. But in March, they might have more. I know that the sock crate was sold out this month, but there might be more slots that open up at the beginning of March for people that were asking about that. So yeah, I think that, okay, so let's do some brainstorming. So with this gray blank, how should I dye it? So it's I was hoping that it would be like sort of a paler gray, but this is not, I mean, I could spray paint it. That would be kind of cool to do the rainbow with the color mist sprays on top of the gray and have like a gray deep rainbow speckled. I'm not sure how much yellow would necessarily show up on it because the color is so dark. Oh, I'm glad he said hi to Lucas. Yeah, Lucas recently, last week, he broke his collarbone. And so he's having another just Lucas and Mommy home day tomorrow while his brother is going to go be with my mom. And I was like, oh, do you want to dye yarn? And he was like, no, when my arm is better. So yeah, it'll probably be a while before he does a bit again, but he's doing great, and he's doing great with the healing and stuff. But yeah, do mermaid colors, green and blue. Ooh, that would be pretty. That would be really pretty. I know, I always like, with everything, I'm like, gotta break violet, but ooh, I would look like a green, teal, and blue. That's a really good idea. Yeah, but so then should I do like stripes, or should I do a gradient? Stronger colors like blues and purples, yeah. I mean, so I surprised myself a little bit when I was over dyeing the highlighter yellow. For one of them, I did Wilton's black because, it was a safer choice. But for the other one, I over dyed the yellow with Wilton's violet. And the colors were gorgeous. I was really surprised. I was a little afraid that I'd end up with something kind of brownish because mixing yellow with purple. But it sort of got me thinking about, like, you know, about like the level of risk that I want to take and whatnot. Ombre. All right. I think that start a new page. Ideas for Soft Blank Special 2. Gray, straw, ombre, mermaid, blue, teal. Cool. I like it. I mean, I love ombres, and I think that, you know, I think if it were up to me and I was dyeing for myself, I would probably dip dye. I mean, you know how much I love dip dyeing anyway, but I would be inclined to dip dye and then, you know, turn and dip in another color to create really, really long gradients, because I just think that it's so fun, and it's something that, you know, there are other techniques to do that you can do to get stripes and other techniques for other kinds of patterns. But with blanks, it's just really a great way to get that beautiful long gradient. Do I have those yarns by you to show us? The highlighter yellow yarns, no, those would be hard to get to. I have like plastic storage boxes stacked, and those are stacked pretty low. Let me see if I can find. I can drop a link to the video in here. Nope, stop playing an ad for me. Good thing I have the sound off. Okay, so this is the highlighter yellow video. I just dropped the link. And I know that, as you can tell, that there is a bit of a delay from what I am saying to what pops up in the chat. You want to dye different mini skeins. How much yarn is in a mini skein? Ultimately, for a mini skein, you could have as much from, I mean, I think that 20 grams might be the largest that someone might call a mini skein, but you could do all the way down to 2 grams if you really wanted to. I think that the common mini skein sizes that I tend to see would be 5, 10, or 20 grams. Those tend to be the most common. Some companies you can purchase 10 or 20 gram mini skeins from them. I think 20 is pretty common for when you're purchasing a bunch of mini skeins. But I know that people who swap mini skeins, a lot of them will do a 5 gram mini skein, because with like some projects like the hexapuff quilt and stuff that are really popular, 5 grams is enough to make more than one of the little hexapuffs. So people would, to sort of sample yarn, or sometimes if a new, like with Knit Picks, when they release a new yarn line, people in the group will say like, okay, let's do a sampler of this. Everybody contribute, you know, X dollars. I will buy, you know, one of each of the skeins, divide them up into mini skeins, and, you know, then mail them out to you. And so and I think people tend to do 5 or 10 grams for something like that. But again, it's really up to you and the kind of project you want to do with it. What is my favorite way to dye? Ooh. Good question. I think, well, one of my favorite things to dye is I love breaking Wilton's Violet into the magenta and blue. Like this gorgeous, gorgeous yarn that is purple to pink with blue specks through it was a double knit crochet blank that I dip dyed in Wilton's Violet. And, you know, the fact that this came from one color of food coloring, I mixed one dye pot, and it's just from the way that you submerge it in, you can get this huge range of colors. That is something that I never get tired of different ways to play around with it. And I enjoy dip dyeing in general. I just like seeing the colors change as it goes in the pot. But yeah, so I think that in general, my favorite thing to do is to break Wilton's Violet. But I'm very excited. I know that there's some acid dye colors that break. And I have 3 that are supposed to break, 2 greens and a purple of Dharma colors that, not in this special, but I will be playing with those maybe even in a live stream at some point. Um, so let's see. Yeah, you were going to say breaking violet. You buy a lot of mini skeins in 25 grams. Okay, 20 isn't enough for me to do heels, toes, and cuffs. Ah, okay. Yeah, so I mean, again, it really depends on what you're going for. Yeah, I guess some people will sell mini skeins, as was mentioned in the comments, for people who want to use like a really highly variegated yarn for a sock, but then maybe want something more solid for the heels and the toes, or maybe the cuffs. Then I guess, yeah, so some people will sell 25-gram mini skeins. And yeah, I mean, I think just mini tends to refer to anything that is not sort of a standard 50-gram or 100-gram skein. Do I make custom order dyed yarn? No, not really. I don't. So I don't really have a shop yet. The only time I've ever sold the yarn was when I was doing the Kickstarter to raise funds to buy a lot of the bare yarn that we're going to be using now and some other tools. I do have plans to set up, I believe, and I do have plans to set up an Etsy shop to do occasional de-stash sales to help fund more materials and stuff to kind of keep this going, because, you know, I start to have a bit of a problem. I mean, this is only what, like 600 grams in here, but as I film more videos and as I dye multiple skeins of yarn in videos, it just accumulates faster than I can use it. And so I always have some things that I will keep for myself, but then some of it I plan to sell, so that way, as a way for people to support me. But right now, other ways that you can support me are by watching the videos and liking and commenting on the videos. That is always a very, very big way to help. But if you wanted to give me money, I have some patterns for sale on Ravelry. My username there is ChemKnits blog, and the shop name is ChemKnits Designs. The patterns for sale are actually on the sidebar of my website, chemknits.com. You can also, if you look at the chat on the live streams, there's a little $sign. And that $sign is for something called Super Chat. And so I believe that if you decide to do a Super Chat, not only will your message kind of stay at the top of the chat for like a certain period of time, but I believe YouTube doesn't take a cut of that. So yes, if you wanted to contribute to stuff, that is a way that you can. But I might also set up a Patreon at some point, so that way, to kind of have there be a way for people to help back and support this. But all of these other things are in the works. I'm still fulfilling the Kickstarter. I've sent out all the rewards from the Kickstarter, but I have to finish I've filmed episode 34 and then probably 36, 37, maybe 38, but I still have to film episode 35 of Dye Pot Weekly, and that's the last one that's been funded by the Kickstarter campaign. Does the yarn stay crinkled after being made into a soft blanket and dyed? Yes. So you can see this yarn that's being unraveled from the blanket is crimped. So what I do, I'm glad you asked. I will wind the yarn. If it's double stranded like this, I will wind it. I'll kind of separate the strands and wind one skein on one side and one on the other onto this PVC pipe niddy noddy. To be like a proper niddy noddy, it should be twisted. But when I'm doing a double stranded blank, I keep it sort of in an H configuration. And then after I wind it onto the niddy noddy, I will wet it and let it dry. So that way the crimps sort of relax, and then you end up, therefore you don't see like this guy isn't crimped anymore. So YouTube takes at least 30% from Super Chat donation. I looked at one of their website, like on one of their FAQs, and they said that we got all of it. So, which surprised me, because it surprised me a lot. So I honestly don't know how much of it they get I mean, it would make sense that they would get more, but I read something from Google that made it look like that they were giving more of it to the creators. But again, I don't know for sure. Um, you saw concentrated liquid Kool-Aid and you found yourself wondering about it. I mean, I'm assuming it would work a lot like the Mio. Um, and so there's, I forget what Dye Pot Weekly number that is, but I dyed some yarn with Mio and it's really cool and gorgeous. So I think liquid Kool-Aid would be similar. I'm going backwards. I know I missed some comments. One of the reasons you're learning to spin and dye your hand spun yarn for heels, toes, and cuffs. So that way you can make just the amount that you need. That's awesome. Yeah, so at this point, I don't do custom ordered dye, custom ordered yarn. I might, like, if I'm doing a de-stash sale, I might do dyed to order colors of, dip dyed Wilton's colors and take requests like that. I did do custom made to order sock blanks as Kickstarter rewards. And so, I mean, conceivably it's something that I could do again, but for now, like, and again, even with like starting to sell some of the yarn, my goal is still my primary goal is to film these videos and tutorials and to experiment with different ways to apply color to yarn. And that's one of my passions, I guess, is to kind of, I have this list of ideas that keeps growing and growing and growing. And so kind of like I want to see what happens if I do X, Y, Z to yarn and then see what kind of pretty things we can create. And as I do that, then I end up with, a box full of homemade blanks that I want to dye in various ways. And I almost tossed the Knitting Naughty onto the ground. So, my goal isn't to necessarily, like, if I wanted to be really efficient and dye a lot of yarn for the shop, there's things that I would do differently to sort of keep costs down. And some techniques, certainly making your own blank is more like, if I'm making a homemade blank to dye is something that requires a lot more effort than buying a commercial blank, but which is also then more expensive. But if you're a home dyer dyeing for yourself, making your own blanks can be totally worth it because it opens a whole new world for the kinds of colors you can create. But some of these things, and even though I might de-stash some of these in a sale, in general wouldn't necessarily be worthwhile to do if I was intent on running a shop to try to make earnings that way. Well, and the other reason is, since I dye all my yarn on video, that means I'm sharing all of my secrets with you, with you guys. So that's the other reason that I won't ever go kind of like full blown into shop mode. So yeah, so now, okay, so I'll have to look more into the super chat stuff. Because, it's something that the chat isn't like flying fast enough that it's really like, oh, if you want your comment to be seen, you need to like pay money. But it's, I don't know, I guess it could also be used as sort of like a way to give contribution. I suppose that when you say someone is sponsoring a video, what do I mean by that? So in the Kickstarter, as one of the rewards, some people were able to pick levels of sponsorship. And so what the sponsors would get, they would get sponsorship credit in the video. So I would thank them in the video. And then they would get some of the yarn that I dyed in that video. And they picked the type of yarn that they would receive. So sometimes I may have dyed 2 skeins of yarn in a video, maybe one Stroll fingering weight sock yarn and one Will of the Andes worsted weight yarn. And in some cases, the sponsor had requested the sock yarn base. And so then that I would send to them once the video was edited. And so then they'd get the credit in the video. And people also gave, I asked for their least favorite colors. So that way, I wouldn't send anyone a color that they hated, and sort of went from there. And so that was the sponsorships that have happened. And so I don't know if it's like something that would, because Etsy is more for like giving something like tangible, but I think that because from the sponsorships I am shipping the yarn, And so the like it no one really chose the level of sponsorship that would allow you to help design the whole episode with me. And so that would have been like the most customizable yarn, because at that level of sponsorship I would have done, tried to match colors or do, the limits were, there were much less constraints on that, but that was more expensive, and so that one wasn't selected. Are you gonna dye with avocado at any time? Yes, it's filmed and it's in the queue. I don't remember when it's coming out. Let me see. I can look this up. There are some spoiler pictures on my Instagram. I'm at ChemKnits on Instagram. Let's see if I can figure out when avocado is going to come out. So that'll come out towards the end of March. And I dyed both wool and cotton yarns with avocado. It's cheap. Patreon can be cheaper, sure. Poor Lucas is calling again, but Daddy's on duty right now. Can you make a video about how to use Wilton's I don't know if you mean Wilton's cake gel dye to make dye to yarn with. I don't know if Walton's is a different brand or if you're talking about Wilton's. So what is the cake gel dye? So I haven't used their gel. I've used the icing colors a lot, which are sort of gel colors. I would imagine that other ones would work very, very similarly. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know entirely. But yeah, I actually have, so let's see, I have some powdered food coloring that I haven't played with yet. I have some candy colors, which are oil-based. Because with like the candy melts, if you're going to try to mix your own colors, if you're going to add like liquid food coloring, that would affect the texture. So they have some oil colors that I haven't played with yet. I have some tulip tie-dye pens that I want to use at some point. I have indigo and natural dyes I haven't played with yet. There's a lot. My list is very, very long of things to play with. But this week in the Sock Blank special is going to focus mostly on food coloring. But you guys have such good questions. I keep getting distracted. Okay, so one crochet blank is definitely going to go in the stripes episode. Any sense of what I should do with this bulky weight crochet blank? Because I don't know what it needs. You have no idea you're planning on dyeing with avocados. Do you have any other natural dyes planned? I do. I wouldn't, it's not something I ever necessarily would have gone out of my way to do, except that I get the requests a lot. So therefore, I wanted to try it. Other things I might play with are red cabbage, black beans, I've heard a lot of people really excited about. And I have the natural dye kit. So I'm going to look at, indigo and some other stuff like that. Could you use Jolly Ranchers to dye? Yeah. I don't think did I have any I may have had a Jolly Rancher lollipop when I did the Halloween special, but you want to do a lot of rinses like right away when you're dyeing with candy, but you can absolutely dye yarn with a lot of candy. Yeah, the Wilton. Yeah, I maybe could check those out. I think that, yeah, I'm not sure exactly how those are different from the icing colors, but I definitely could play around with it. To see different from kettle. Oh, beet juice. Oh, you want me to put this in the microwave to see different from the kettle? I mean, ultimately, if you're, so I've done some kettle dyeing in the microwave, and those can end up, the reason why I typically prefer doing the stovetop versus the microwave is just I have a little more control over the color. Have you thought about RIT in powdered form for speckled yarn? I have, and it's certainly an option. I think that in general, people have been less happy with RIT in terms of its color fastness when compared to other types of dyes. So I think that I don't have any plans to buy any of the powdered RIT dye in the future. I still have a lot of the liquid RIT dye that I need to use, but I don't love how much washing I have to do when I use it, both with wool and with cotton. There's just a lot of washing, and that's not my favorite. But any dye that's a powder, technically you could use to get some speckles. So yeah, I don't know what I want to do with this chunky one, but yeah, I need to sort of lay things out. But I do plan in each episode to have at least one homemade and at least one commercial blank. And then depending on the timing, I might go off theme and then maybe do, because I don't technically have a dip dyeing theme scheduled, but I like the idea of dip dyeing this to get a really cool gradient. Acid, you can diagonally tip to tip for each row a different color. That would be cool. Ooh, breaking black. Ooh, that's a good idea too. I mean, yeah, I mean, you know me. I want to dip dye all the things. Like so one of my favorite hats ever, I took one of my homemade blanks and I dip dyed it in Wilton's Violet. And since it's long, I kind of went pretty quickly. And it's just, dip dyeing on blanks is fun because not only do you get the gradient, but you get sort of the mottled colors because of the way that the yarn sits. It kind of acts as like a mini resist within the knit stitches, and that's really fun. Ha! So Gentian Violet dyes your dog's ears when you treat them for ear infections. That's funny. Ooh, something paisley. Ooh, okay, maybe this needs to come in the random session, and I should draw like a shape on it. I don't know about drawing a paisley shape, but I kind of like the idea, since I do have one dip dyed crochet blank already, and I'm going to do stripes. I like the idea of doing something random. I'm going to add this for my pile for tomorrow. Okay, so these two, I'm going to dye for the stamping. I know I'm going to do one commercial blank because I want to do one spiral, sort of a la tie-dye t-shirt. And then maybe we'll do, if I can figure out how my hot plate works, I might do that. A hank of yarn is round yarn that needs to be wound into a ball. Twisted hanks are referred to as skeins. Yeah. A skein is a commercial wound ball that is normally oval. Oh, yeah, that's, the hank skein terminology is not something I'm good with. I tend to refer to, yeah, I'll refer to balls of yarn as like, oh, I needed 2 skeins. I tend to use skein versus ball, but yeah, so this was, again, the dip dyed crochet blank. You've been following. Oh, thank you. I'm glad that you enjoy these videos. I like doing these live streams because it's fun to just sort of hang out, chat, and think and plan. It's a lot of fun. But I know I still need to unravel this one at some point, but this, okay. I figure if you're watching all the way to the end, you deserve the spoiler. So the way I dyed this, and this was because you might see me comment in videos that I have a paper towel, and often I'll use that to wipe up excess dye. And I'm like, ooh, this is really pretty when I get on the paper towel. Gee, maybe I should like wipe up dye with like some fabric or something at some point to see the random pattern. Well, this wasn't like spilled dye, but I added dye into like a dish basin and then sort of rubbed the dry blank on it. And I did add some vinegar to the dyes. But so what happened And I did it sort of in a gradient form, starting with like silver gray and then adding more and more black to sort of get all these different gray tones. I sort of wish that I had started with maybe 2 different colors so that way we could see, like, you know, if I had used red or blue and yellow, so then you could see the mixing more, because the mixes are, since they're 2 sides of like the same kind of color, then that didn't show up as much. But I think that we're going to get, because the coverage was so light, we're going to get this sort of like gradient of speckles that come out. That'll be really fun. You love the colors of the purple dip dye? Yeah, those are a lot of fun. But yeah, it was cool to get really shallow coverage of color with a technique that was not the color mist sprays. Because don't get me wrong, I love the color mist sprays. I think that they are the coolest things ever for dyeing yarn. The problem with the color mist sprays is that they are pretty expensive. I think I was able to use 1 bottle on, and I mean, this wasn't 100%, but I used it on four skeins of yarn before I ran out. And it had at least 50% coverage on 3 of them, maybe. So there's a limit to how long that they last. And so, you know, if you were going to say that maybe a whole bottle would work on maybe 200, like to dye 2 whole 100-gram skeins of yarn, and they are like $4 each, that's a lot cost-wise. Do you have a video on Wilton? Yes, I mean, most of my videos, maybe not those gel colors that you mentioned, but I do have a lot of videos with Wilton, with the Wilton gel icing colors. You know, all the Wilton's violet that I do is from those icing colors, and a lot of the black. And so I would say I probably use those Wilton colors more at this point than I do almost anything else. Yeah, the purple dip dyes. You could do multiple colors like red and black. Yeah, I did. So I do have a red and black blank that I did that was, well, it was a random pattern, and it ended up getting a little away from me. I tried to dip dye red, and the color change was way less, like way more subtle than I intended. There was a gradient, but it was so subtle. Like maybe one end was a hair lighter, and then I did like this crazy random black pattern all over. But oh man, ooh, hopefully there haven't been too many stream interruptions. Eek. Oh, Indie Ponce. Yeah, red and black is fun. Yeah, I love color suggestions, because I think if I had it my way, everything would be purple, blue, green, teal, and I'd sort of stick in that range. But with the acid dyes, I'm just loving being able to use black and gray. So I'm wanting to use black and gray on everything right now. The first time you dyed yarn was when you bought yarn that you didn't like when you got home. There's different shades of gray and black. Ooh, and you did, ooh, broken violet over that. Yeah, I bought some gray and black white yarns because I want to over dye them with different colors. And I thought that would be really fun. Someone asked before about, you know, buying yarns locally. And you can certainly, at like big craft stores like Michael's and Joann's, you can usually find something that you can dye. They certainly will have yarns that have at least 20% wool. They might only have a couple of choices that are 100% wool, or say like 70% wool, you know, 25, 30% nylon. So the natural fiber choices tend to be a little more limited in the big box craft stores. But I know not everyone lives near like a knitting shop. Oh, good. I'm glad. Yeah, I use the Wilton's icing colors all the time. I love them. Have you thought about doing a chart of what yarn was used and what method of dyeing and how much dye was used to obtain color X? I have not thought about doing that because there are people that have done that. Let me see. Yarn blue. Let me see if I can find the website. Okay. dyeyouryarn.com. They have compared, and I'm going to post the link in the chat. So dyeyouryarn.com has done a mixture of combining most of the big brands of liquid food coloring, gel food coloring, and to see what color do you get with this, and if you mix with that. And so it's a nice resource. So if you want to, say, get a specific color, it's a place to go to start. So on their website, they have, you know, green formulas, and they talk about mixing like different Wilton colors with different McCormick's colors, and they have like pictures on there with all these different shades. So the reason why I haven't thought about doing that is because it's been done. Oh, no problem. Ooh, robin's egg blue with specks of navy or indigo. Ooh. Ooh, navy is a little hard to do with food coloring, just because, I mean, it's just like because of the lot of blue, not because of breaking or anything. Do I have? So I've got navy Rit. I did not buy any navy. Basically, with the jacquard acid dyes I bought, I should have. Navy is one that I probably should just buy because it's one that would be worth having. And is another color that's just, you know, I can get deep blues, but I haven't quite. Maybe if I used straight undiluted McCormick's blue food coloring, it would read as navy. So I could do some navy specks. You can see I'm writing this down. Oh. Yeah, you thought with the jacquard? Yeah, I need to get some jacquard navy. But anyway, all right, I think Indy's starting to grumble because he's been patient waiting for dinner. No worries, no worries. So I might have to go. Oh, weird. I might have to go get to him. But thank you all for joining me for this sort of like brainstorming session, kickoff of the week. If you're tuning in late, what I did today was talk a little bit about some of the different kinds of homemade blanks I made, how I made them, what sock blanks are, some things that will show up in the pre-filmed videos. I'll once again share the link to the schedule. And along with the schedule, what I've added beneath the videos are like any special materials that I'm going to use within that video. So for example, on the spray, on like the spray paint video. Oh, yes, Lucas. Well, I'm finishing up my video and then I can help, but if you need help right now, you can go get Daddy. Okay, you're gonna wait for me? All right. I have a feeling Daddy said that that Lucas needed to go to bed and that he wasn't gonna go in anymore because someone's not going to sleep. But yeah, but anyway, I'll run up and help him in just a sec. Yeah, so we just talked about a lot of stuff, and I'm liking some of the ideas of, you know, especially what to do with the gray and with this other, to do sort of a random pattern on the other crochet one. I don't know, I'm just really excited to play around. And so I will be live again. And actually I hear Keith actually went and helped him, and I think told him that mommy is busy. Yeah, so tomorrow night I'll be on starting at 8 p.m. Eastern. And I don't know quite how long I'll be going, but, you know, definitely at least an hour, probably closer to 2, before, you know, I start to turn into a pumpkin or something and need to go to bed. And then Tuesday morning, you know, it'll be early, starting at 9. So yeah, I'm excited. But the Die Pot Weekly, Die Cut Weekly comes out tomorrow, and you'll see how I dyed this pretty guy. So I hope that you all have an amazing night, and thank you all for joining me today, and we're gonna have so much fun. I can't wait to see what you guys create too. Thank you so much. And what? Oh. Sometimes I get confused. Yeah, I hope everyone has a wonderful night, and I'll see you tomorrow night, and we'll start doing some live sock blank specials. Thank you so much, everyone. Good night. And of course, like, I like to say goodnight looking to the camera, but then I have to click 2 buttons to actually stop. So this time, good night for real, everyone.